Go.
The value of Aesop fables in educating Black children, any child. This is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the Grand Houses in Harlem, USA, 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. I'm the co-host of the Wisdom Table, Brother Leroy, thankful to the Most High for blessing us with the opportunity to be with you and you to be with us. The Wisdom Table is a workshop of young women and myself, coordinator, who bring you as often as we can information that otherwise would not reach the general public. This program today does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of the NYCHA Development, Grand Houses. Neither does the views, etc., that you hear on this program reflect anything relating to the residential council at Grand Houses. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program live in living color and by Zoom. Our guest today is a young lady who's going to share with us her journey in education as it relates to homeschooling, as it relates to the discovery of the value of Aesop. A lot of us pronounce it as Aesop, Aesop fables. There's Aesop fables. And without further ado, we're thankful to the Most High for blessing us with the presence of J.E.Franklin in Harlem, USA. God bless you, sis.
Thank you. God bless you too.
And what we are approaching is the experience that you have had with actually applies to any child. But the most important thing is that it's been tested and proven well done in the inner city setting. I saw a couple of demonstrations with the young children at Kennedy Center a few
Uh-huh.
years back when they had you had taught them, exposed them to Aesop, and their families came and cheered them on. It was just a fantastic learning experience for me. So, give us the background, first of all, in terms of Aesop. How did you stumble or come to be aware of Aesop?
Well, growing up, we were introduced to Aesop and what they call the Uncle Remus stories when we were children growing up in Texas. And when my grandson entered the second grade, he was having some problems in school with the bullying, not because he couldn't learn, but school just wasn't a very pleasant experience for him. And my daughter decided to take him out of the public school, and we were going to homeschool him. And so, looking around for reading material, um, I didn't find anything that excited him. And I decided, well, let me just reach back and pull up and draw up on some of the fables that I learned when I was in kindergarten, elementary school, and I created a game called Spinner Play, and that's a reading tool that allows the person who is participating in the game to randomly select a story. And the stories that I used were translated into 3-minute plays. And that way I could have an interactive thing going on with my grandson. And through the Aesop fables, he learned all of his reading skills, all his grammar. And when he took the state exam of, for his grade level, he was 2 grades ahead of children who had been in the public schools the whole while. So this is, it's an excellent way to get children to get excited about reading and get excited about learning. And as Socrates put it, he said, through the fables, children learn the business of life. And that's a good way to put it, because these stories, which have at the center of philosophy and a moral lesson, or that teaches children right from wrong, how to make choices, and also how to understand human behavior. Although Aesop uses the animal, people just automatically understand that they're, they're, they're using the animals to teach something about life and about human behavior.
Now, you quoted Socrates a minute ago. What was
Mhm.
that statement of Socrates?
What Socrates said was that through the fables, children learn the business of life. And he also,
Okay, all right.
what he also said about Aesop was that Aesop was, he was the greatest philosopher of his day. And he used the Aesop's fables to communicate with his own disciples. He had disciples, he had students. And when he was thrown into prison for offending the state, he had 1 year to live. And in that year's time, he decided he was going to turn his attention to processing the fables of Aesop into interactive stories. And the last year of his life, he tried his best to translate and process every single fable Aesop had written or had told. And
Mm,
we don't know what happened to the manuscript. We're told that some of his students had copies of it and copied some of them and smuggled it out of the dungeon, but that others were destroyed. But still, the stories of Aesop have lived over the centuries. So he was born over 500 years before Christ was born. And these stories have lasted all this time in every language, in every country in the world. People know who Aesop was. And unfortunately, they're not, his stories are not used enough in the schools in this country. So this is a way of reintroducing them into uh, a child's learning life.
okay, let's go back to your grandson
Hmm.
and you're developing these 3-minute interactive plays. Okay, he learned grammar. He learned. You got to give us a picture of what was happening in that classroom in the home, where quote he did learn spelling, he did learn language. Give us a picture of that.
Well, as I said, the tool that I used was a game called Spinner Play. I designed it, and I designed it because sometimes you can pick up a book and a person can read the book, but if a person has a choice of a story, and this game that I created randomly selects the story, and that way the person who is participating feels, oh, I've just chosen the tortoise and the hare. I've just chosen the boy and the nuts. I've just chosen the boy who cried wolf, or I've just chosen the ant and the grasshopper. This is a way of drawing the child into the story, so that there's an element of mystery, but at the same time, there's an element of choice in it. So with each story, as I said, they're only 3 minutes long, and this is a good way of introducing children who are reluctant to read. If they're struggling to read, if they're reluctant,
Mm,
this is a way of uh, introducing children to reading. If they're not quite ready to pick up the book and struggle through a book, they will participate in a play because there's a role for everybody in a fable. There's always a role. Uh, and Aesop wrote about every theme in life. And children can relate to these fables because they're short. They're written in a style that the child can understand, and they just take off with it. There's no resistance whatsoever. There's one particular school that I get called to come and do a demonstration of Aesop's fable. The Albizu Campos, Don Pedro Albizu Campos School or here in Harlem on 133rd Street and Amsterdam Avenue. I've been in and out of that school every year for the past 14 years. And
Mm,
now I didn't realize they were giving me what they thought was the worst class. But I've never had any problem with any of the classes that I've been given. If I come into a room and I have this tool, this spinner play tool, that allows children to select their own play and do their own casting with the children that they want to work with, there's no discipline problem whatsoever. Never a discipline problem. They select the play, they cast it, they rehearse it for about 5 or 6 minutes, and they perform it in front of the class, and that allows the teacher to ask them some questions where they can do some critical thinking about what is the play about, who is the central character in the play, what does this character want, and how is this character responding to other characters? Do you know someone in real life that reminds you of this particular character? So the fables are so rich that a teacher who is a good teacher could just take them and really build upon the structure that is presented in the plays. The grammar is always uh, easy for the child to understand. Uh, the stories are the stories, the characters. There's nothing that cannot be done with the fable. Even every subject matter, history, social studies, even math. These teachers have been able to use these fables, and the stories calm children down. They not only learn the business of life, but it relaxes the spirit, and it teaches the moral lessons without getting preachy or even without touching on religion. It just has
ex-
universal truths.
beautiful. The aspect of being, at what point did you learn or became aware that you had been given the toughest, most challenging classes in that school? At what point did you learn that?
After the class was over and we were in the lunch area eating lunch, and teachers were telling me that that's the worst class in the school, and I couldn't believe they were talking about the same children, because those children were engaged, they were rehearsing their fables, and this is all volunteer. If I tell the whole class I need someone to come and select the fable, now children want to act. In fact, there ought to be a stage in every classroom, and so that children are able to get some of that energy out and come and select their fable, select the children they want to work with, go off into a corner and rehearse the fable, and just get up on the stage and perform. And the good thing about seeing them in front of the class performing is that they know that everyone's going to get up and perform. There's no one left out, because since there are only 3 or 4 characters in a play, and there are 10 plays to a board, that means that every single child in that classroom will have a part. No one is left out. And sometimes it does happen that children then they'll select all the kids, and there might be one child left, or it might be 2 children left that no one selected. Well, then I'll perform with them. The teacher will perform with them, but every single child in the classroom has a part, will have a part in that play. And it cuts down on, as I said, it cuts down on discipline problems. Um, if someone is if a group is performing a fable, everyone is attending, because they know, well, my group's going to be up there, and they gave me respect, so I'm going to give them respect. And that's an opportunity for the teacher to even teach respect. to teach the class. Here's a group that's
Mm.
performing. How do you want to be treated when you get your group up here and your group is performing? So, and also the group performance allows children to not feel alone. They're not up there giving a speech. They're not reciting anything. They are being a character. They are actually performing and being. And you have to actually become a part of the story by being that character. And it just the fables are just a tool, an effective tool for solving a lot of classroom problems. Well, I don't know if the children will be able to go back to classroom anytime soon, but when they do, you can't go wrong with the Aesop fable.
Well, J.E. Franklin is our guest here on the Wisdom Table, and there are other areas we're going to get into in addition to Aesop. But I want to go back and deal with what you have learned over the years.
Mhm.
I think you said you've been going into Albiso Compost something like 14 years straight.
Yes, the
And what
past.
have you learned about the myth, the myth of these children not being able or qualified to be educated, so-called the worst class in the school? You've heard that over and over again through the years. What has that taught you about the quality of the children that you come into contact with?
Well, there's no such thing as worst class. I don't know, uh, what these teachers. I don't know what their experience was. Obviously, it wasn't pleasant, but because I was a guest lecturer, maybe they just needed a break. I don't know, or maybe they just really just love the material because the fables are rich. Maybe there's something maybe there's something wrong with the material that children get that keeps them from being attentive. In fact, there's a saying that if children are not learning, there's something wrong with the lesson, or with the way it's being taught, or with the teacher, or all of the above. So, uh, bringing something into the classroom that
Right.
cuts across all of this, that children just uh, it, it, their spirits take to each other. The children take to the material, and the material takes to the children. So if you have this kind of harmony, then what can go wrong in the classroom? If there's harmony between the material and the children, then maybe that will solve a number of problems. There was something that Socrates said uh, when he was locked up, and his disciples asked him why he was spending his last year on the life and the material of this ex-slave. And what he said was that the important thing is to combine that there must be philosophy. If you're teaching, philosophy is the most important thing. You must teach children philosophy. And that if you do that, you must do it in a way that it's appropriate for their age level. And so what he said about Aesop was that not only was Aesop teaching philosophy, but he was able to combine it with story and poetry. And then if you combine story, poetry, and philosophy, that makes you a great philosopher. That makes you a great
Mm.
teacher. And that out
Wow.
of all the philosophers of his day, that he know, this is Socrates talking. He said that of all the philosophers that he knew, Aesop was the greatest of his day. He was the greatest because he was able to combine these three things. And I think that what happens in the classroom when I take the fables in is that there's something that's natural that the human being needs: philosophy, poetry, and story. And that if one is missing, then you're not bringing a complete a learning package there. But if the three things are there and the children are able to get all three things at one time, what else can they want for? There's love in the story, there's love in the philosophy, and there's
mm,
love in the poetry.
mm.
So what what problems could you have in the classroom other than something that can be handled? That can be handled and
Mm,
without disrupting the
mm,
whole class, without disrupting the process.
mm. Well, the mm, that opens up a big door. That Socrates piece,
Okay, the sound is
and
going.
let me go back
Mhm.
to the trans. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is better.
I want to go back. I want to go back to the transformation of your grandson,
Uh,
and it wasn't that he was a terrible student or anything. He just wasn't learning in that environment. That's are we correct in understanding that?
well, he was bullied. He was bullied nearly every day, and if you bullied, you're not learning. And if there's a lot of bullying going on in the classroom, then that means the children are not engaged. The other children are not engaged in the learning process. If there's time for bullying, so this is why I recommend
Got it.
a
Okay.
stage. This is why I recommend a stage in every classroom. Because if children are on that stage, they're not bullying anybody. They're so busy trying to perform and get it right and get the applause. And there's something about a stage, about being on a stage. When you see a child on the stage, he's he's grounded. There's grounding. There's grounding going
That
on
is
there.
right.
Yeah, there's grounding. And I don't know what the
No, wait a minute.
hesitation.
Wait a minute.
Uh,
Wait a minute. You said is grounding.
yeah, you
Grounding is
yeah,
that
there's
the
grounding.
word?
You're grounded in the process. When I say grounding, I mean that there's a kind of a settling in of being present and being ready to learn. You're ready. You're not scattered all over the place. You're not distracted. There's very little distraction that's taking place if children are working on a fable. If they're working on a fable, and
Mm-hmm.
there might not be but three or four characters. I try not to have more than three or four characters in a play, so that uh, that's a group, that's a cohesive group, and there's an organic process that gets created just automatically with the between the three or four children. There's an organic process that's taking place, and I call that
Mm-hmm.
grounding. They're grounded. They're not all over the place because the story centers them on a task. And once they're centered, that's it. And then the teacher can always, uh, you know, segue into other areas. They can do some writing about the fable. They can
Right.
do some drawings about it. They can have a dialogue or conversation about the characters. There's so much that can be done with one fable, and I see that they're working on uh, how to group children now when they go back to school. This is a good way to get them to work together as a group around a theme, whatever theme uh, that the story deals with.
Right.
And there's several themes. I mean, they're all over the place in terms of themes. Uh, Tortoise and the Hare, for example, that's a favorite. And of course, the tortoise speaks the hare, and that's a good way to let children hear that moral that the swiftest don't always win first place. You just take it slow and steady. Slow and steady gets it. That's what wins the
Yeah.
race, not the swiftest,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Right.
not even the strongest.
That's right.
And then sometimes strength comes in so many different forms. There's so many lessons that can be learned and taught just using just with that one fable, the tortoise and the hare.
That's let me just say this. I'm playing it back to you. Grounded. What I'm picking up from Grounded is confidence, is
Mhm.
uh, roots taking place, the person
Yes.
being rooted in their own
Yes.
confidence. There's I understand you clearly. I just needed you to explain what grounded is to just what I
Mhm.
said. A person having roots growing out of it. I mean, if figuratively speaking,
Mhm.
that stage or being put in front of that class and having a role,
Mhm.
it brings out the God in the individual. That's what I'm saying. It brings out the God in them. We're made in God's image. And the fact is, that's every human being. And it goes, this conversation goes to the myth of gifted and talented being only relegated to certain schools in the city. This thing about myth
Mhm.
of gifted and talented is so bogus,
Mhm.
and it had for me, Leroy, and it gets our people to be scrambling to get their child into a so-called gifted and talented school when all the children in the city are gifted and talented. Your comment.
I agree with that, and that's why when this term, girl, that was the worst class. That's the worst class in the school. And when I heard teachers say this, and you know, just having observed these students performing, and they were so talented. The imagination that they brought to the performance of the fables, I would never have thought of using some of the techniques that they used. So I just couldn't figure out what, unless they were talking about the behavior, they couldn't have been talking about the ability to learn. They could have been talking about that. But I think they do the children a disservice, and they do themselves a disservice by labeling the class um, a bad class with bad kids, or bad this or worse that. Uh, that these fables, as I say, they calm the spirit, they relax the spirit. Um, they ground, they root the learner gets rooted in what is going on in the story, and what philosophy is being taught. It And then they're able to see the poetry in all of learning, the whole learning, uh, the whole learning field, and just love learning, love learning. They can't wait for
Hmm.
the next fable. And
Right.
Aesop is credited with over 650 of them. How can you go wrong? You finish one fable, get another one. You know, if you like the ant and the grasshopper, or the boy who cried wolf, and people are always crying wolf. They're always saying, oh, there's danger over here, there's danger over there. Well, maybe there is, but if you keep saying it, after a while, people are not going to believe you. And then when there's real danger, you're not going to be on your guard. So all of these fables have something uh, that we can learn from.
Now, the your background. Let's talk about your background, JE, in
Mhm.
terms of your writer of plays. I guess we call it a playwright, and
Mhm.
give us the journey into that world.
Well, believe it or not, I wanted to I wanted to write novels, and um, when I came to New York, I got introduced to the theater, and I fell in love with the theater. Uh, the first Black actress that I saw on stage in a professional role was Barbara Ann Tier of the National Black Theater. And I'd never seen a professional black actress. I mean, I'd seen black people on the stage, but you see them in movies, of course. But I'd never been to live theater uh, in a professional capacity in which I had seen a black actress in a professional role. And the play was written by a woman playwright named Rosalind Drexler. And there was also a black actor in the play whose name was James Anderson. And just seeing James Anderson and Barbara Ann Tier on the stage in a play, uh, I'm thinking, well, maybe since I can't write a novel, maybe I can write a play. So I thought about it, but I didn't get an opportunity to really write a play until I went down to Mississippi as part of the Mississippi Summer Project and working with Miss Fannie Lou Hamer on the voter registration drive and being in a community in which children couldn't read. Really, you talking seventh grade, reading Fun with Dick and Jane, and reading those the same silly primers that some of us grew up reading. I decided to write a play and let the children supply the lines to the play, uh, and basically doing the same thing that I was doing with the Aesop fables, but letting the children write realistic stories and realistic plays, and through those plays, children were able to learn how to read more than just Dick and Jane. And when I came back to New York, I worked in the education department at Lehman College, and of course used some of the same methodologies and introducing stories and performable uh, performable forms of learning rather than just the academic thing to teachers. And that just, my whole career just took off in terms of writing plays and combining plays and education and children's literature and adult literature. And I have a book coming out, as a matter of fact, on one of the fables, Cool Kid, the Goat, and the Wolf. And
Wait a
people
minute,
can
say that again.
cool,
What
it's called
what's
Cool
the
Kid.
title of that?
The title of the fable is Cool Kid, the Goat. And there's a wolf in the story. So between the publisher and I, we decided we're gonna call it Cool Kid the Goat and the Wolf. It's based on one of the Aesop's fables, The Wolf and the Goat. And
Yes.
if you you have a computer, you want to go on. There's an app called Story Jumper, a website called Story Jumper. When you go on Story Jumper, you'll be able to click the page, and everything is digital now. You'll turn the page, and you go from the cover to the end of the book um, digitally. So one of my goals is to do all of the Aesop's fables that I have translated into hip hop form uh, in a book, in a series called a Hip Hop Aesop, and to
Mm.
have each fable as an individual book rather than put all 10 of the fables in one book. Just have each book separate. Each story will be a separate book. And that seems to be working. The publisher I'm working with down in South Carolina has the setup all worked out, and the book is all laid out. It looks very good. The people who have seen it, the young people who've seen it, children have seen it, they're very excited about it. And it will be coming out very soon in softcover and hardback.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank
Um,
you.
okay, your background is vast, but we're missing the piece with the summer project. How long were you in Mississippi? That's number
Mhm,
one. No, I'm sorry,
mhm.
number three. Number one is what group were you involved with? What conscious raising group of individuals were you involved with in
Mm.
order to even want to go to Mississippi and meet Fannie Lou Hamer, et cetera?
I was with the Congress of Racial Equality and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And a few weeks before I joined the movement, I'd heard a speech by Dr. King. In fact, I'd gone to the 1963 March on Washington. And, you know, shortly after that, the appeal went out to young people who were in the North to go South. Well, I was not even thinking about going back South. I was born in the South. I left the South. I didn't want to see the South again. I certainly didn't want to see Mississippi anymore because I'd had an incident uh, down in Mississippi um, on my way to Louisiana, on my way going back into Texas, um, and I wasn't feeling that. But you know, I decided I would just try it one more time. And you know, Dr. King, you know how persuasive he was. He felt that this was something that we needed to do. Uh, he wanted young people to come south and register people to vote. I wasn't even thinking about the field of education because I was just focused on the voting. But when I got to the community, a little community in Harmony, Mississippi, it was right outside of Carthage, and I got into the community and realized that the children could not read. And I mean, you can't imagine that
Hmm.
someone could be in the seventh grade and be struggling to read a first grade book. But I kid you not, and I'm not exaggerating. And we found a little church that had been abandoned, and we cleaned it up and painted it up and set up school in the building. And then some people came from the county and said, "You're trespassing. This is on city land, and you have to get off. You have to get out." So we got out, and we started having classes under the trees, and we did that for the entire summer. And
Hmm.
even on the days that it rained, thank God, it was the kind of weather in which the sun was so hot it would just dry the land in no time. And we just kept meeting under the trees. And for the entire summer that I was down there, that's where I taught my classes. And it reminded me of Reconstruction, of the days of Reconstruction, when in the South there were over 3,000 Black schools that were formed. There was just this uh, passion for learning. Everybody was setting up a school on the porch, uh, in the yard, just everywhere. And we just started reaching back and just remembering what we've done in our lifetime when the odds were against us and we didn't have anything. We didn't have any books. We had no books. And so we just had to create our own material and we had to find our own space to get the learning done. And some of the children who were in that freedom school, we call it a freedom school, some of the children who were in that school went on to graduate from high school and even get teaching jobs. A couple of them went on to be teachers themselves later on. So, nothing stops us. But that was quite an experience. That's just something that happened in my life that made me passionate about education. Education is key. It's the key.
The oh, okay. I'm looking at my notes.
Mm,
Okay, you taught under this tree,
yeah.
and in the book Dark Ghetto, by Kenneth Clark, There's a
Mm-hmm.
chapter that relates to their their teaching during the summer, during the summer in the city. They're teaching youngsters how to read and write, and it was only maybe 4 hours a week,
Hmm.
some minimal number of hours per week. But at the end of the summer, their reading ability had increased way beyond where it had been. What was the transformation that you saw in the youngsters under that tree who couldn't read, etc.? Talk about that.
Well, because we lost the space in the church, I saw the children coming into the church very excited, of course, because they were painting, they were involved in cleaning it up, and they were looking forward to getting them a school. And then when we were chased out of the church by the city or the county or whoever these people were, um, I saw them fall into a depression. But then when we said, look, let's just go under the tree. We went under the tree. Um, they found their excitement again. They found their voice again. And when they were doing the plays, uh, the adults in the community built built a community center, the first community center that they had had in that little village. And we opened the center with the performance of that play. And I wasn't able to go down for the play because by that time I'd come back to New York, and I was working here in New York. But uh, all of the testimony about what those children did with that play in that opening night of the community center, the parents wrote me letters and called and said, "You don't know what you have done for these children." Now, the transformation was just magical, magical. They
Man.
performed that play. Uh,
Hmm.
the community was close to an Indian reservation, and they invited the members of the reservation over periodically, to come and see the play, and then there was this cultural exchange, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if some of the if after a while they did incorporate some of the Indian children into the play because it was all about freedom. It was good. The
Wow.
title of the play was called "A First Step to Freedom." And I would like to say that
Mm.
that's the first play. That's the first play that I wrote. I thought it was a full length play. It wasn't really a full length play because I didn't know. That was my first play. But that
Mm.
that I saw that it's my first step to freedom too.
Go ahead.
And it just
Excellent.
yeah, it that was a jump starter for me. That was a jump
Okay,
starter.
and when you came to New York, going back before you, when you came to New York, you
Hmm.
became involved with a theater group. What group was that?
Well, I worked with the New Federal Theater, Woody King Jr.'s New Federal Theater down on the Lower East Side, and actually the play that I wrote right after I came back from Mississippi um, was called The In Crowd, a play called The In Crowd, and it was a play that I wrote for young people. It was performed at the the Montreal Youth Festival in Montreal, Canada.
Mm.
Um, so I was
Mm.
still working in the what they call young adult, the child young adult area of educational theater. And then that play came back and was performed here in New York at the New Federal Theater again, but through mobilization for youth. And then from that,
Mm.
and then from the In Crowd, then I wrote Black Girl, and that was my first off Broadway play. Um, that was moved from the New Federal Theater to the Theater de Lys, and it won a Drama Desk Award. Yep,
Black
Black Girl.
Girl. Black Girl. That's your signature play.
I think so,
And
yeah.
talk, just for a moment, um, Brother Wayne just came to mind. Wayne Grice.
Yeah,
Talk about your interaction with Brother Wayne.
Wayne was in one of my plays, and I don't remember which one it was. It might have been The Prodigal Sister because that's the one that I wrote right after I wrote Black Girl. And then he was in some of my 10-minute plays. I
Mm,
started writing the 10-minute play, uh, later on as a way of getting young playwriting students to not be afraid to write plays. You start with a 10-minute play, and that would give you enough exercise to eventually expand into the one act and then the full length play. So,
hmm
as I said, I just did the 10-minute play as an exercise, and Brother Wayne was in some of the 10-minute plays, which is
mm,
usually just has would have only 2 to 3 characters, and it doesn't mean that they uh, are monologues. They're full plays. They have all of the ingredients of a full play, but they're just short. They compress the short story into the dramatic form. So here again, I was using the short story that I had used in Mississippi with children and transferred that into professional theater with the 10-minute form, combining the short story and the drama.
Now, Black Girl was okay. Wait a minute. I'm going back now. Wait a minute.
Hmm.
Combining short stories with drama.
That
Drama
was
being acting
hmm
play. That's
yeah,
that's what you
hmm
mean by drama.
well, anything for the stage, the drama. I say the
Okay.
drama because I mean, it's still the play. It's the same thing, but combining the short story and the drama. This is what I call the 10-minute play,
Okay. The
rather
reason,
than
reason, re, see when we talk about drama in the street, we talk about drama.
yeah, but it's
Drama.
not fake. It's we're not talking about wild drama. We're talking about drama that has some shape and some purpose
Yeah.
and some craft to it. We're not and some art. We're not talking about this spontaneous wild drama that's going on with people going into a place don't want to wear their mask and drawing guns on people. We're not talking about that kind of drama. No, not no street drama.
Okay. No, neither, neither the drama taking place every day in relationships. Um, going back to Aesop, what are
Hmm.
some sources that folks can begin to do research
Hmm.
on Aesop fables and get to have an appreciation that they may not have now?
Well, what I found in my research,
While you're
although mhm.
thinking, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we're having an echo in the sound. But what I found
I'm
in my research was although people thought that and I've heard this from time to time that people say, well, he just wrote little kitty stories. But I I found not only his mention of his name and praise for him and samples of the fables. I found them in Plato. I found them in Aristotle. I found in Herodotus, Plutarch, Chaucer. I found them in Sophocles. I found them in Aristophanes. These are playwrights. Uh, and I found him all throughout Western literature. And if people really want to know how important he was, go to those sources and see what these people have to say about it. That there was a monk in the 13th century um, who was a scholar. His name Planudes, and he wrote he wrote really a definitive a definitive piece of scholarship about Aesop, and he was the one who declared that Aesop was a black African from Ethiopia. And then when asked uh, about his ethnicity and his nationality, when people asked Aesop himself, well, what are you? He says, well, I'm a Negro. And although if you look in literature, Western literature, they have painted him as a white Greek. Uh, his nationality might have been Greek because the slaves back then they took on the nationality of their master. But he was from Ethiopia, according to Planudes, and the word Aesop is a corruption of the word the Ethiop and Ethiopian. Uh, this is the name that the Greek name that was given to anyone who was born in Africa and had a swarthy look or black look and full lips. So, according to Planudes, he was uh, he was an African from Ethiopia, and the animals that he wrote about, they all found in Africa. They're not found in other areas of the world where they want to place him. That's why he was
Mm,
called. Yeah,
mhm.
he was only called the Sage of Lydia because he was invited to live in the castle with King Croesus of Lydia. But we know he was black. We know he was an African, and we know that he was an Ethiopian.
How do people make contact with you and follow up to what they've heard today?
Well, they can email me at je413@aol.com. Um, I'll respond. That's my email
Okay.
address. Yeah, je413@aol.com.
Okay. And in terms of the research on Aesop,
Mm-hmm.
World's Great Men of Color by J.A. Rogers,
Mm-hmm.
he has about 4 or 5 pages on Aesop in volume 1. World's Great Men of Color by
Yes,
J.A. Rogers, volume 1.
yes, he
And
was on that.
you skipped over before we conclude. You skipped over your your life in the South. You were born in Mississippi or Alabama?
No, I
Where?
was born in Texas. I grew up in Houston. I went to the same high school that Barbara Jordan went to, but she graduated, of course, about 2 or 3 years before I did. Mickey Leland is from Texas. Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Uh, so I'm from the big state down
You,
there.
you're from a learned background. That's what you're saying. Now,
Yeah,
when you talk about the sister, the Congresswoman
mhm.
Jordan, you just mentioned her name.
Yeah,
Um,
Barbara Jordan.
yeah, the same high school. Was that at your time a black high school
Yes, they was all
or was
everything
it
was
mixed?
segregated. No, it wasn't mixed with nothing. When they say mixed, the, it, we weren't black and white back then. We were white and colored, and everyone who was not white was colored. So that would include the Mexicans. We didn't have Chinese children in the school, but when the Chinese workers were brought to America at the end of the 19th century, they were not allowed to bring their women. So many of them did marry Indian and black women. So we had teachers whose last name was Chin, and they had Chinese last names, but they were colored. They were all mixed. They were black, but they were mixed. And then Mexicans, we had teachers named
Got
Morales,
it.
and we had but they were colored. they didn't have, they couldn't go to white schools. You know, you had, if you had one drop of what they call colored blood in you, you could not go to a white school. So we ended up, our school ended up being a colored school. Really was all the colors except, well, except the white.
Right.
And yeah,
The the
so
uh, the the reason I went there is that I was raised in, of course, New York City.
oh,
But what I understand from my mother and what I understand from other stories is that the teachers, the black teachers in those schools, were
hmm,
dedicated in creating a student who was way above level of the segregation that
right,
was imposed on us. And
that's right.
what was your experience?
My experience was that I'm very
Just flesh that
grateful.
out. Flesh that out.
Uh-huh. I'm very grateful that I went to a school that was separated, segregated, whatever you want to call it. Um, I'm thinking of what something that even Dr. King said before his assassination, and that was that he had made a mistake in asking us to integrate. That in asking us to integrate, he had asked us to integrate into a burning house because under the separation and the segregation, our teachers really believed in us. They believed in us. They were the bridge that got us over the troubled waters. They uh they loved us. Many of
Mm,
them were our relatives. uh, my
mm,
cousin was my father's niece was my seventh grade English teacher, my seventh grade teacher. So I'm a product of a segregated school. So I don't
excellent.
I have all praises for segregated school. I have praises, all praises.
J.E.Franklin, thank you for joining us on the Wisdom Table, coming to you from the Grand Houses in Harlem, USA. Independent station connected with the James Weldon Johnson houses in East Harlem,
Mm.
another independent station brought to you by a team of brothers and sisters who work collectively in getting communication to Black folks that otherwise not be possible. J. Franklin, thank you for joining us on the Wisdom Table.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Brother Leroy.
And ladies and gentlemen, once again, this program does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of this NYCHA development, nor reflect any views that might be contrary or the same of the resident association here at Grand Houses. Thank you very much. Be sure to share this video with others when it goes up on YouTube. It'll go up on YouTube, the Wisdom Table, and the date 8/13/20. God bless you all with a wonderful and a fantastic day.